Welcome to Revolutionary Motion, where we show you tennis from a different perspective. In this video, we're going to explain to you the differences between the Eastern, Semi-Western, and Western grip in a bit more detail. So first of all, you've probably all heard about the fact that on the Western grip, you add a lot more spin to your shots, and it's much easier to add spin to your shots, or top spin specifically, than with an Eastern grip. So you can see the trend there from Eastern to Western grip. The more you change it towards the Western grip, the more easy it gets for you to add spin to your shots, but the harder it gets for you to hit a flat shot. Now, why is that the case? And there's a very easy reason for this. If we're looking at how the racket is held in the contact point with each of those grips, if you're trying to give it topspin. So starting with a Western grip. The Western grip is somewhere down here. So now if I'm trying to hit a forehand, okay, and this is a grip I feel very comfortable with. If I'm hitting my forehand and I'm trying to keep my racket, in a contact point where I feel like, okay, I'm going to make good contact, I'm going to give it good spin. You can see how my wrist is very straight. Like I didn't have to bend it at all, my arm is not in an uncomfortable position, all of this feels good. Now if I'm changing my grip a bit more to the semi-Western grip, right, which is basically if you're putting the racket on the ground, you pick it up from the top, you're going to end up with a semi-Western grip. Now if I'm in this grip, again, my wrist is straight, my forearm feels comfortable. But if I'm now moving towards an Eastern grip and I'm trying to make contact the same exact way, you can see how more of my hand is on top of the racket. I'm grabbing it more from the top. So this makes it very uncomfortable to swing up on the ball and close my wrist or my racket even more. My forearm and my wrist get into a very uncomfortable position. And now this gets easier to lower the ball. Now it's not as uncomfortable, but the higher I put my arm up, the more uncomfortable this gets for my whole body. So that tells you that if I'm trying to add spin to my shots, the Eastern grip will put my hand and my forearm in a very uncomfortable position, which means it will be difficult to generate a lot of force upward on the ball in this situation. Now if we're looking in comparison at the semi-Western grip, obviously this feels so comfortable. This feels comfortable as well. I'll feel good anywhere here, right? But at the bottom, when the ball is lower, it feels a bit more uncomfortable than on the Eastern grip, but not very much, so you can still deal with it. Now, if we're looking at the Western grip, on the other hand, every ball that's really high, I feel super comfortable with. I can give it spin from any angle here, no problem. But when the ball is really low, I can't really get under the ball. So I have to spin it, in my case specifically, this works for me, more like a bowling shot. I'm going around the ball like this. But that's very challenging. It's very tricky to learn that. It took me a lot of years to, be good enough at it to consistently use it. So you can see here that the Western grip has a big weakness in that it's very difficult to deal with very low balls. And the Eastern grip has a big weakness in that it's very difficult to deal with higher balls. And that's why most players nowadays use a semi-Western grip. Now the players that don't do that use maybe more of an Eastern grip, like for example, Tsitsipas did, Federer did. Federer is not as Eastern as Tsitsipas though. Both of those players, they tend to hit the ball more forward. They're not trying to spin up as much on the ball. So they tend to hit more through the ball, and with an Eastern grip, you can slap the ball much more easily. It's more like a natural slapping motion. Well, with a Western grip, for players like Kyrgios and Jack Sock, for example, that's much tougher. It's doable. It's absolutely doable. But you can imagine it's much tougher to slap like this and be consistent at it, right? Because the grip just makes it it makes it look uncomfortable already. So those slaps happen in a slightly different way. You're not natural at that slapping motion, so it's tougher for you to add that power without spin, even though it's not impossible. And sometimes you can even see Kyrgios when he hits that super fast forehand that seems super flat, his grip is not where it was before. He makes it a little bit more Eastern. So it's very important to understand that if you're trying to figure out which grip you're going to use, you have to know what level you're aspiring to reach. If you're trying to go very high up, a semi-Western grip is probably the best way to go, but you could deal, with Eastern and Western grips. The lower your level that you're trying to reach, the more difficult it will be to use an Eastern and a Western grip. And the easier it will be for you to use a semi-Western grip, because it's the easiest grip to learn with, and it's the easiest grip to get consistent at to a certain level. And if you're trying to use a Western grip, the angles are so challenging that, same thing goes for an Eastern grip by the way, that it will take you much longer to be good enough at it to have a consistent game. So keeping that in mind, try to stick with a semi-Western grip unless you're one of the few players that is trying to go very high up and you feel very comfortable and you feel like the grip that you chose supports your game style very much. So for example, if you like to hit a lot of topspin, you have a talent for it, you might go a bit more Western than a semi-Western grip. If you tend to hit the ball very flat and maybe Federer or Tsitsipas is one of your role models and you're trying to reach that kind of game, then maybe a more Eastern grip is a favorable option for you.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys soon.